Alright, welcome back everybody. We are now in round 3, coming to you with this game on Bulan Complex. And I'm joined once again by Alpha Hex. Alpha, why don't you start down in the bottom and introduce our first player?
In the bottom spawn, we have Rainbows and Unicorns spawning in as the blue Aeon commander, dropping down 2 air factories, and going for some eco. Who do we have on the top, Spiff?
Alright, on the top side, spawning in as the white Cybran commander, we have Xplo. Also going for a quick air factory here, just one for now though. So he's going to be a little bit behind on planes to start out, but we'll see if this turns into an air war or if one of these players decides to push heavy on the ground. This is generally considered to be kind of an air map for 1v1s.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of flanks you can use by crossing those bridges, but air is just... This map is just way too big for you to be able to bring enough anti-air to justify those flanks, so bombers are always able to deal with those. But it's...
Rainbow's sending out the scout now. Second air factory coming down for Xplo as well, so at least for the start we're going to be seeing an air battle. And Xplo scout turns around to try to deal with that plane. We are trying to feature everyone on stream today. I know that you're seeing a lot of the same players over and over, and that's partly just because we only have 5 people in the tournament today. It does look like, though, since next round Rainbows will be sitting out, get a bye next round, we wanted to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be featured on stream. So that's why we're casting Xplo 2 games in a row here. Potato Man has not yet been featured on stream, so we're going to be going to his game for round 4, which, I don't know, Nite said it was going to be 3 rounds, Challenge says 4 rounds, so whatever, fuck it, we'll do 4. Alright, both players now expanding over to the right-hand side. Which is, I think, a little bit closer than expanding to the left, if you're looking to get to the spawn. Although I do kind of tend to see people expanding in both directions on this map. What do you think, Alpha Hex? Is it better to just focus on one direction on this map or to expand in both?
I definitely like Xplo's position here a lot more, because as you can see, Rainbows only has 2 engineers, and she sent both of them on one side, where she can only get like 10-ish mass extractors.
And only one of them is
very
queued up.
greedy, and you can see Explosive actually build 2 extra engineers, which is great because he's going to be able to get a lot more eco and a lot more air factories later on.
I don't know that having all these extra engineers is doing him any good, though, because you see only one of them is building and the other 3 are just sitting there waiting for enough mass to build.
Yeah, it might be a little too much, but the problem here is that Xplo doesn't have a radar, I think, so as you can see, Rainbows is able to pick them off, and Xplo doesn't even see the planes.
Well, he certainly sees them now.
So he might have been a little too greedy here.
That engineer gets away with less than 100 health on it. I can't believe Rainbow's let that go.
Well, she's probably going to get it on the second pass. Xplo does not have enough planes here.
Yeah, she definitely gets it on the second pass. Is that going to give Xplo a good engagement, though? Yes, it is.
It is a good oh, wow, Rainbow's doing a really long circle, losing like 2 planes before the airfight even begins, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough.
Well, Xplo at the very least managed to equalize things in the air, and actually he might win this air fight. It's really close.
Even if both players walk away with nothing and it equalizes here, Xplo still gets the reclaim field, so he can definitely just build another engineer and recycle all of the dead planes on the ground. But yeah, he does actually manage to win, just because how close those air factories are. So this is looking very bad for Rainbows, as she's behind on airplanes and economy here.
Yeah, Rainbow's position just hasn't really evolved since that fight got set up there. And yeah, we're seeing some more eco come out for Rainbows now, but yeah, she's on the back foot here.
I'm not sure what the justification was for sending 2 engineers into the same spot, as only one of them has been building most of the time. That seems like
I
a
think it might have been a
mistake in
box error.
allocating your
I think it might have been a boxing
resources.
error, like she meant to grab one
Yeah,
of them and
maybe.
box both.
And now it's just too late to fix that. But she still isn't making any engineers, so that left expansion is not getting used.
Yeah, Rainbow's doubling down on another air factory. Meanwhile, Xplo is up to 4. But Xplo also really not taking advantage of his air advantage. He's just sitting back with his air, not doing much other than building up his eco at the moment.
I think he's relying on the Cybern build cost, build time to really boost his economy. But he's kind of lucky here because if Rainbows was expanding, it would just be like an equal position. But Xplo doesn't even realize that since Rainbows isn't expanding, this time where there's no fighting going on is benefiting him the most, as he's just gonna snowball his base with a
And
stronger economy and more factories.
still no radar on the map for him unless he's got a radar attachment on one of his factories that I missed. I don't see one though. So both players pretty blind at the moment. No radars on the field at all, and no scouts going out. Well, here we go. Okay. Xplo finally scouting around the map.
I mean, this is a very non-confrontational map because if you zoom out completely, you can see there's just this massive beam where there aren't that many mass extractors in the middle, and there's not that many reasons to overextend your air force and put yourself on the back foot because of travel time. Especially when you're going in blind, it's very risky, and that's what cost Rainbows the first air engagement, I think, even though she had more planes.
Yeah, I think, I think the mistake that really cooked Rainbow's goose there was bombing that engineer and then turning the planes around before they killed it. Because if she had just dropped like 2 more bombs in that first pass on the engineer, she could have gotten away scot-free. But because she had to turn around and go back to continue bombing the engineer, that's what gave Xplo the excellent engagement that won him the air fight.
And as you can see, Xplo is he's already done reclaiming all of the dead airplanes from that first air engagement, so that's another boost to his economy. So,
and he just has tons more air factories queued up here.
Yeah, I really like the research stations because the scary thing about Aeon airplanes is the shields and the holo flares, right? So when you're ahead as a Cybern player, the quantity of your planes usually isn't enough. You also need to invest a lot into research to really catch up on that.
All right, finally we do see a radar on the field for Rainbows. Let's see, I think that's going to reach to about here-ish, about the base of the spawn hill on the other side. So really not going to see a whole lot right now, but definitely a good defensive position there to cover the right flank with that radar. Rainbows has quite a few airplanes here. It's always hard to tell who has more when they're all bunched up like that, but just based on the flow of the game so far, I'm pretty sure Rainbows is still behind on air.
And I think now Xplo's gonna get punished for not having a radar because Rainbows is gonna be able to pick off another mass extractor and get away with it without taking any damage.
She targets the energy generator first, though, which, I don't know, maybe she probably didn't know what it was when she targeted it, thought it might have been a factory. Just saw it building.
Could have just been a micro thing as she's trying to expand and she just clicked the first thing she saw and retreated,
yeah,
thinking that Xplo's planes were close, but...
And Xplo is almost completely done filling in his mass extractors on his half of the map. He's only got, what, 3 to go, 4 to go? And lots more air factories coming out now. Honestly, is he just going to go for the snipe?
I don't like how Xplo's not putting his factories in a grid, because if you look at his base, there's like one spot where he can hide under 3 shields at the same time. So when it's going to get into late game, there's no water here he can hide in, and he's going to be in a constant risk of getting sniped by rainbows.
I mean,
Surprised we're not seeing any land factories on the flanks.
you could say the same thing about Rainbows, though. Her factories are kind of all over the place, and she's going to have a hard time finding multiple shields to hide under if the time comes.
One thing that's popular here in team games, and probably 1v1s as well, is walking your commander up a little bit just to cross that first ramp right outside your base, and building the air factories there, because there's, well, I mean, it's another flat area you can use, and it's also a little closer. It's in a better position to be able to react to, you know, to defend your base.
Yeah, because it plugs up that one choke point, and then it gives you easy access to the other two choke points that lead to the other spawns.
Right. And it's kind of hard to build the air factories in a grid in your original base, because you're also going to have generators and all sorts of other things in there, and the mass extractors, which are removable, so it can be tricky to design your base in a way to have that grid.
Oh, is Rainbow's going to go for the fight? I don't know if I like that, because, I mean, he actually has shields. Maybe flares as well. I haven't seen him yet, so I don't know, but I still think she loses this air fight if she goes for it.
I think Xplo's trying to cash in on the research. He's trying to delay the air fight, sacrifice a couple mass extractors, and
well, that's not
only
a delay.
Now engage. Maybe he was waiting for an upgrade. I wasn't keeping track of if he had shields or not, but I think he was waiting for an important upgrade there, delaying the air fight, you know, sacrificing some extractors, and whatever upgrade he got looks like it's deciding the air fight here, because his airplanes are just so ticked up because of the early research stations he was able to afford that
I think he has
Rainbow's
training.
Just lost everything. Yeah.
I think he has training on at least training 1 on his air.
The Cybern health upgrade actually gives you more than the plus 25% that Aeon gives, or is it 15? I know the Cybern one is plus 30%.
Yeah,
the one you
it's
get
a
before
big
shields.
Upgrade. It's a big
so
upgrade.
that's the advantage Cybern gets against other factions early. Well, UEF gets the same one, but UEF, you know, that's usually not the deciding thing, since they just outproduce every other faction on fighters. And this kind of looks like game for Rainbows, as she doesn't really have any plan B to deal with the planes.
Yeah, there's just how's she gonna stop it? There's no way to get enough AA to defeat this many planes that quickly. She is hiding under some stacked shields here, but you know, snipe coming in, another pass, maybe 2, and she's done.
Right.
And
so that was I think the only thing that Xplo could have done better is build like 1 or 2 land factories on the flanks, because if he can afford that many air factories and research stations, he can definitely spare some mass for 1 or 2 land factories, which are just going to be a huge problem for the enemy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that was a pretty fun game 1. We're going to take a very short break and come back to you with game 2 in just a minute. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Spiff coming at you with round 3, game 2 between Rainbows and Xplo, joined once again by Alpha Hex. And Alpha, why don't you start at the bottom left and introduce our first player here?
Right, in the bottom left corner of the map, we have Xplo spawning in as the White Cybern, going a little heavier on eco and dropping down land factories slightly more forward, which is a very similar build to what we saw in the Tourney Dome match against Fox. And who do we have on the top right, Spiff?
Spawning in the top right on open palms here, as the blue Aeon commander, we have Rainbows and Unicorns. Started off with a quick air factory and is immediately producing a plane for that scout. 1 land factory and pushing ahead with her ACU to get a forward radar there. Pretty standard opening for Aeon on this map, I feel like. 1 air, 1 land. Very flexible and allows you to transition into whatever it is that you need once you scout out the opponent. Xplo so far has kind of had a I think, a bad habit in this tournament of producing a bunch of bots and then just letting them sit in his base. So we'll see if he gets a little bit more aggressive now that he's got lots of open flanking routes.
And as you can see, what Rainbows is doing is basically the safer version of the build that Foxtremolin did in the very first game we casted. Since if you put that land factory a lot further back, you have more space, and you also build it sooner because it's closer to your spawn. You basically manage to get out more units before the minimum time that the enemy is able to reach your base and do any sorts of damage. And Rainbows is immediately expanding to the sides, not even scouting, which is interesting.
Yeah, not scouting, but also not hiding the planes.
I think Xplo might have the radar upgrade because he's immediately building an anti-air tower on the left side and on the right side. So he must have gone for the plus 50%. And if you put it there, you can see everything up to like the back of that mountain behind Rainbow's spawn.
Yeah.
So he sees the planes and he's just paused his factories and he's going really heavy on eco, which is the right thing to do here, I think, when you know that your enemy
it's one of the good moves when you scout that. Yeah.
Has planes.
I
now that Xplo has anti-air, Rainbows is not going to be able to snipe any engineers or mass extractors. All he has to worry about is the radar, but that's too deep into his base for Rainbows to attack it, I think.
Yeah. Rainbows has paused all of her factories here to get some more eco going and is starting to push out a little bit.
I think the second land factory from Rainbows was a little too early because I do this build and I think she just stalled on mass there because that was just way too much expansion. And the second land factory, she must have just ran out of mass and was forced to pause the air factory. So all she managed to get out is 4 airplanes, which is not gonna be enough to deal any damage.
She's lost 2 of them already. But no, I absolutely agree with you. I think putting that factory down early is really risky. A couple more mass extractors before that factory would be a lot smoother on the eco. Rainbow's now pushing up in the center, though, with a fairly sizable land force, all things considered. Xplo has been very, very focused on expanding that eco to the sides and getting those AA towers up. Those towers are awfully expensive, though, and so Xplo is going to have a little bit less to defend this push.
Right. As long as Xplo plays a little defensive here, maybe places down a turret and makes some mobile artillery, you can see, the amount of units they have is already more or less equal. And Xplo is going to be able to afford more factories, and they're fighting on his turf. So those units coming out of the factories are going to be able to get to the front line faster.
The only problem
is trying to make.
The only problem is that Xplo's got bots, and unless he's got some really good micro in this fight, the tanks are likely to win it.
Right. You have to play for the advantages of the bots. You can't really flank here since Rainbows has airplanes, but he has the big radar, so you should be able to see that Rainbows only has 2 airplanes, which aren't really stopping him from the flanks.
Yeah. If I were him,
even when you can't flank,
I would send 2 bots to each side as they become available, and even just 2 bots. Like if you lose them, it's only 2 bots, and 2 bots can do a lot of damage and pull a lot of attention away.
Even if you're unable to flank, the bots still have some tricks up their sleeve in the big mid fight. If you get the movement speed upgrade and you swarm the tanks, if you manage to close the gap and not let them abuse the superior range that they have, the bots actually do have better DPS, and they can dodge the shots much better if they're closer. So
speaking of longer range, though, this point defense is in range of the factory and the radar station.
Yep.
Ooh, man. Xplo's finding himself in a tough spot here, just because of the nature of Aeon point defenses.
And I think he's just playing too passive again here because he's just retreating the bots to the back where they're not really going to do anything, and he's basically letting the Rainbows destroy all of his land factories without really offering any counterplay. The TMLs on the factories are good, but I'm not sure if they're going to be enough to stop the momentum that Rainbows has here.
Yeah, see, I agree with you what you said earlier about like, okay, he saw air and then expanding to the sides and getting a bunch of mass is a good move in response to that. The problem is if you don't also try to take the center, this is sort of what's going to happen.
I think the problem is that he placed 4 factories. Like, he placed 2 factories on each of the expansions, and look at what he's doing. He's rallying the units, like, around the back to the center. A much better move would have been to just have the factories there to defend.
And then maybe send those bots just straight in.
Way too thin here.
Yeah.
I would just commit to those factories being on the sides, and I would just like rally the units straight into Rainbow's base.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
why worry about
thinking.
your base when you can just, counterattack and force Rainbows to keep some tanks in the back to defend her own base? But
yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's just so much work to be done to dislodge Rainbows from this position at the bottom of the ramp. And unless you're doing something to distract in her main base, she's going to be able to focus all of her attention on sustaining this PD push.
Yeah, this is very unfortunate. Xplo now has less units than Rainbows, and the MMLs are going to have a hard time firing at the PDs, so Xplo had a better position here, but he just didn't manage to hold it.
Yeah, I don't even remember who said it, but way, way back 10 years ago when I first got this game and started watching tournament videos, someone, one of the old school guys said, the most important resource in this game is not mass or energy, it is time. And I think that's really what Xplo could learn here is, okay, you've got an advantage, now how much time do you actually have to take advantage of it? And so while it was a good move to expand out to the sides and grab up a bunch of more mass, it took a little too long. And it put too big of a dent into Xplo's production.
Underprepared for that early push. But I think if he made mobile artillery instead of bots, like that would have been enough to defend. The problem with the bots is that like only half of his army is firing at any given time, while all the tanks are firing because of the better range. Bots were just not the right decision here, since you're not going to be flanking with them. And if you're going to be fighting for the middle, then mobile artillery is a lot stronger.
Xplo now down in the red, and
Rainbows has to go through. And Xplo goes down, and that's the game.
Another tie, 1-1. All right, well, that brings round 3 to an end. The challenge does show a round 4, so whatever, we'll go ahead and do it, even though Nite said it was only going to be 3 rounds, but we'll make it 4. So lucky you guys. I guess that was Nite's Easter egg for us this time, since he couldn't be here today. So all right, we will be back very shortly with round 4. Don't go anywhere.
If you're still watching, give a thumbs up to this video. If you liked the video, leave a comment. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you are blown away by it, check out my Patreon page. This has been Nite. Take care and peace out.